Welcome to the Royal Road School of Carmelite Prayer. Saint Teresa of Avila tells us that the divine path of Carmelite or silent prayer is the royal road to heaven, and that those who travel it will be given a great treasure. A link to the Praying with Teresa of Avila website has been provided below to enable you to easily find the Catalogue of Offerings on this channel, along with today's presentation, Favors 1, Effects. The website provides all the simple tools you need to develop your own practice of Carmelite or silent prayer, along with complete course materials to start your own school of prayer in your parish or community. The Book of Her Life, The Collected Works of Saint Teresa of Avila, Volume 1, Chapters 37 and 38. Favors 1. Effects. Chapter 37 discusses the effects of a certain favor the Lord granted her. Some very good doctrine accompanies this discussion, tells how one should strive for a greater degree of glory and esteem it highly, and that we shouldn't neglect everlasting goods for any difficulty. It's hard for me to say more about the favors the Lord granted me, but to obey the Lord and your reverences, I will say something to give him glory. May it please his majesty that some soul may benefit. May all be encouraged to please his majesty, since even in this life he bestows tokens of his love. First, it must be understood that in these favors the Lord grants the soul, there can be more or less glory. The difference in a delight and a favor God gives in a vision or rapture can be so great that it seems impossible there could be anything more to desire here below. And so the soul doesn't ask for any more happiness. Since the Lord showed me how great the difference is in heaven between the joy of some and of others, and on earth as well, the Lord has no measure in giving. I wouldn't want to lose as much as one tiny particle of greater glory. So if I could choose to bear all the trials of the world, to go afterward ascend to greater glory, or no trials to then descend to a little bit less, I would eagerly choose all the trials to rejoice more in God's grandeurs. I see that whoever understands him more loves and praises him more. Even if I were in the lowest place in heaven, I would consider myself fortunate to be there. With every favor granted me, whether vision or revelation, my soul gained something. The vision of Christ left upon me the impression of his beauty, and one time is sufficient to make this imprint. A benefit I received that was most advantageous was around a serious fault I had that did me much harm. When I began to know someone liked me and I found them attractive, I became attached. This was something so harmful as it was leading my soul astray. After I beheld the beauty of the Lord, no one in comparison with him seemed to attract me or occupy my thoughts. By turning my gaze just a little inward to behold the image I have in my soul, I obtained such freedom. There is no knowledge or gift that could amount to anything once one word spoken from that divine mouth is heard. I experienced this freedom with one of my confessors, who I believe stand in the place of God. And so I showed them I liked them. They were afraid lest I become attached, and they showed me their displeasure. I laughed to myself to see how mistaken they were. A greater love and confidence in the Lord began when I saw him as one with whom I could converse continually, and that he wasn't surprised by man's weakness and many falls resulting from the first sin he came to repair. I can speak to him as a friend, even though he is Lord, unlike the lords here on earth, whose lordship consists in artificial displays and who have not trampled the world underfoot. Those who have speak the truth, since they have no fear and are obliged to no one. O King of glory, how true that your kingdom is not armed with trifles, since it has no end. There is no need for intermediaries with you. Upon beholding your person, one sees that you alone merit to be called Lord. On earth, if a king were alone, he would fail to be recognized. Thus the reason for the artificial displays. It is impossible not to see that you are a great emperor who shows humility and love to someone like me. We can converse and speak with you as we like, although the fear of offending you becomes greater, not a fear of punishment, for this punishment is nothing when compared to losing you. There are the benefits from this vision, besides other great ones left in the soul. If the vision is from the Lord, it is known through its effects, when the soul is in the light, but the Lord often wants it to be in darkness and not see this light. It happens that for 8 days my soul was in a stupor. It pleased me to see the weakness of the soul when God is not working in it. In this state, the soul is not without him, but though the soul puts wood on the fire of love does not burn. It's through his mercy that it sees at least smoke to know the fire is not entirely dead. The Lord returns to enkindle it. The best thing for the soul to do is to surrender to the fact that of itself it can do nothing. I dared to complain of his majesty and said to him, "How is it, my God, that it's not enough that you keep me in this miserable life where everything hinders enjoyment of you, in that I have to eat and sleep and carry on business and talk with everyone? How is it, when there is so little time left to enjoy your presence, you hide from me? How is this compatible with your mercy? How can the love you bear me allow this? I believe that if it were possible for me to hide from you, as you hide from me, that the love you have for me would not suffer it. But you are with me and see me always. Don't tolerate this, Lord, I implore you, to see that it is injurious to one who loves you so much. With my whole mind I make these complaints, and the Lord puts up with me. May so good a king be praised. We wouldn't dare say these things to earthly kings. I didn't know how to live when I entered St. Joseph's Monastery. The soul sees it mustn't miss any of the fine points in the world's rules of etiquette. These rules weary me, though, and I was never done excusing myself because I couldn't help but make many mistakes. Anyone who cares about heaven needs to have a continued solicitude about pleasing God and despising the world. It is beyond me how anyone can have so much concern about pleasing those who live in the world, which is always changing. I don't know how to live with any more. I pity spiritual people who are obliged for certain holy reasons to live in the world. It is a terrible cross they must bear with all those rules of etiquette. If you could become ignorant in this science, you would be freed from a lot of troubles. Wanting to speak of God's grandeurs, I've ended up speaking about petty worldly things. Since the Lord has granted me the favor of abandoning this world, I want to go forth from it. Let those who love such trivial things attend to them. Chapter 38 deals with some great favors the Lord granted her by showing her certain heavenly secrets, and with other great visions and revelation that His Majesty wanted her to see. Tells of the effects they had on her and of the great profit her soul derived from them. One night, being so ill, I took my rosary and tried not to recollect my intellect. A rapture came upon me so forcefully that I had no power to resist it. It seemed to me I was brought into heaven. The first persons I saw there were my parents. It lasted only a short time, and I was very ashamed to go to my confessor that he might make fun of me. But finally I went to him. I never dared remain silent about such things on account of the great fear I had of being deceived. Since he saw how anxious I was, he said many kind things to me. Sometimes the Lord showed me greater secrets. What he revealed was so great, so as to leave me marveling and proficient in considering all the things of life as little. The imagination cannot paint what this light is like. He bestows, along with this knowledge, a delight so sublime as to be indescribable. It's better to say no more. Once, while the Lord was showing me marvelous things, he said to me, "See, daughter, what those who are against me lose, don't neglect to tell them. Ah, my Lord, if your Majesty doesn't give them light, what little benefit will what I say bring to those whose deeds blind them?" I wanted to remain in this state and not return to everyday living, for the contempt left in me for everyday living was great. I see how basely we are occupied, those of us who are detained by earthly things. Once, when I was with that lady I mentioned, she gave orders that I be shown some of her jewels of gold and precious stone. She thought they would make me happy. Recalling what the Lord has kept for us, I was laughing to myself and feeling pity at the sight of what men esteem. The soul has great dominion. It is the detachment proper and natural to us. God does it all. He shows these truths, and they are imprinted on the soul. Now death, which I always feared greatly, seems to me to be the easiest thing for anyone who serves God. For in a moment the soul finds it is freed from the prison and brought to rest. Raptures in which God carries away the spirit and reveals to it such excellent things are like the departure of the soul from the body. For in an instant these good things are seen altogether. Let's omit any word about the pain suffered when the soul and body are torn from each other, for little attention should be paid to them. The death of those who truly love God and have despised the things of this world must be more gentle. These revelations helped me in coming to know our true country and that we are pilgrims here below. It's a wonderful thing to know where we shall live, and a great help to have seen that it is a land where we will be very much at ease. To look toward heaven recollects the soul. Sometimes those who I know live there are my companions in whom I find comfort. It seems they are truly alive, and those who live on earth are so dead. Everything I see with my bodily eyes seems to be a dream and a mockery. What I have seen with the eyes of my soul is what I desire, and since seen is far away, this life is a death. The favor the Lord grants to whomever he gives these visions is extraordinary. They help in bearing a heavy cross, and if the favor is not sometimes forgotten, though it comes again to mind, how could one live? His Majesty has desired I understand something of these blessings, so that what happened to Lucifer may not happen to me. God's mercy makes me feel safe. He has freed me from so many sins. The favors are not as great as the ones I shall now speak of, although each favor in itself is beyond comparison. One day, on the vigil of Pentecost, I went to where I often prayed and began to read about this feast. It seemed to me he was not failing to be with me, and remembered once when I read the passage, I lacked everything, and now understood the opposite about myself. I knew the Lord had granted me a great favor. I didn't recognize my soul by the change I saw. While reflecting on this a great impulse came upon me. It seemed my soul wanted to leave my body because it didn't fit there. The impulse was so extreme. Although seated, I tried to lean against the wall as my natural power was completely gone. While in this state, I saw a dove over my head. It was different from the doves on earth, larger, and it didn't have feathers but little shells on its wings that gave off great brilliance. It fluttered about for the space of a Hail Mary. My soul was losing itself and so lost sight of the dove. The spirit was quieted by so good a guest. When it began to enjoy the guest, fear left, and a joyous quietude began while the soul continued in rapture. The glory of this rapture was extraordinary. For the rest of Pentecost, I remained stupefied and stunned. I experienced wonderful inner joy. From that day, I noticed the greatest improvement in myself, from a more sublime love of God and stronger virtues. May he be blessed forever. Amen. Another time I saw the dove over the head of a Dominican father. The rays and splendor of the wings extended much further. It was made known to me he would draw souls to God. Another time I saw Our Lady placing a very white mantle on the presentado from the Dominican order, of whom I have sometimes spoken. She told me that because of the service he rendered her in founding this house, she gave him the mantle as a sign she would keep his soul spotless and that he would not fall into mortal sin. A few years later he died. His death was so holy, there was no reason for doubt. He at times would appear to me in resplendent glory and told me some things. At the time of his death, his prayer had reached such a degree that he wanted to avoid mental prayer because of his weakness and his many raptures. I saw some favors the Lord bestowed on the rector of the Society of Jesus. Once a severe trial came upon him. He was persecuted and in deep affliction. One day while I was hearing Mass, at the elevation of the host, I saw Christ on the cross. He spoke words of consolation I was to tell the rector, and I was to remind him of what Christ had suffered for him. This gave the rector great consolation. All came about as the Lord had told me. I saw great things concerning members of the whole order to which this Father belonged, the Society of Jesus. I saw them in heaven, and I see their lives are in conformity with what the Lord has made known to me about them. One night, while in prayer, the Lord reminded me how bad my life had been. I was filled with shame and grief. He told me I should esteem highly that a will as badly occupied as mine had been should desire to be fixed on him, and that he would accept it. At other times, he told me I should recall the time it seemed I considered it an honor to go against his will, and that I should remember what I owed him. If I have faults, His Majesty gives me an understanding of them that reduces me to nothing. This happens often. Once reprimanded by my confessor, I sought consolation in prayer, and found there the true reprimand. The Lord had begun to recall my wretched life to me. Ordinarily, when I receive some favor from the Lord, I am first humbled to see more clearly how far I am from deserving favors. After a short while, my spirit was so enraptured it seemed to be almost entirely out of the body. I saw the most sacred humanity with more extraordinary glory than ever. It was made manifest to be with a knowledge admirable and clear that the humanity was taken into the bosom of the Father without my seeing anything. It seemed to me I was in the presence of the divinity. For several days I couldn't return to myself. I went about in the presence of that majesty of the Son of God. The vision is strongly engraved on the imagination, and the impression is very consoling and beneficial. I saw this vision 3 other times. It is the most sublime vision, and bears marvelous benefits. It seems it purifies the soul, and removes almost entirely the sensitive part of our nature, a great flame that seems to burn away all of life's desires. It was made clear to me how everything is vanity. It is a powerful lesson for raising one's desires to pure truth. Great fear is caused in the soul when it sees how it dared to offend so extraordinary a majesty. The benefit coming from this vision is great, and if you do not hide your grandeur, Lord, who would approach a union with such great majesty? May the angels and all creatures praise you, who measure things in accordance with our weakness, and so your great power doesn't frighten us. What once happened to a peasant could happen to us. He found a treasure worth much, and it caused him much sadness, not knowing what to do with the treasure. He gradually died. If he hadn't found it all at once, but little by little to sustain him, he would have lived more happily, and it wouldn't have cost him his life. How admirably you know how to sustain souls. You show them this great wealth little by little. When I behold majesty concealed in something as small as a host, I marvel at such wisdom. If he who grants me so many favors did not give me strength, it would be impossible to conceal the fact about marvels so great. How will a mouth who has spoken so many words against this Lord be united with that most glorious body abounding in purity and compassion? For the love that face shows makes the soul much more sorrowful at not having served him than does the majesty it beholds in him causes it to fear. In some way, in these great afflictions, my soul feels I have done something in your service. I don't know what I'm saying, but I find I'm disturbed, since I brought these things back to mind. But there is no good thought if you do not give it. I am the debtor, Lord, and you the offended one. Once while approaching to receive communion, I saw two devils. It seemed their horns were wrapped around the priest's throat, and in the host I saw my Lord with his majesty. I mentioned placed in the priest's hands. I understood this soul to be in mortal sin. The Lord told me to pray for him, and that he had permitted it so that I might understand the power of the words of consecration, how God is present, however evil the priest who recites them may be, and that I might see his great goodness, since he places himself in the hands of his enemy. I understood how much more priests are obliged to be good than others, how deplorable to receive the most blessed sacrament unworthily, and how much the devil is lord over a soul in mortal sin. It brought me an understanding of what I owed God. May he be blessed forever and ever. Another time, I was at a place where a person had died who for many years had led a wicked life. He had been sick for 2 years, and in some things had made amends. He died without confession, but it didn't seem he would be condemned. While the body was being wrapped in its shroud, I saw many devils take that body and were playing with it and punishing it. It was buried with the honor accorded to all. I reflected on God's goodness. He didn't want the soul defamed, but wanted the fact that it was his enemy concealed. When they put the body in the grave, there was a multitude of devils ready to take it. May this sight be seen by all in an evil state, as it would prove a powerful help toward living a good life. All of this gives me a greater knowledge of what I owe God and what he freed me from. I shall mention only a few visions of the dead, as knowing about them isn't necessary for everyone's benefit. I was told someone once from our provincial was dead. I was indebted to him for some good deeds. He was a person of many virtues, but I felt a lot of disturbance, fearing for his salvation, as he had been a superior for 20 years, and having souls in one's charge involves a lot of danger. I went to an oratory and offered up for him all the good I had done in my life, and asked the Lord to supply from his merits what was necessary for him to be freed from purgatory. While beseeching the Lord for this, it seemed the person came out from the depths of the earth at my right side, and then ascended to heaven with the greatest happiness. And though advanced in years, he appeared to be about 30. I was extremely consoled, though I didn't neglect to get others to pray for him. I couldn't do so with eagerness, as I had seen this vision. One of the nuns in the house, a great servant of God, had been dead less than 2 days. A nun was reciting a reading from the Office of the Dead, and I was standing next to her. Halfway through the reading, I saw the nun who had died. Her soul was going to heaven. This was not an imaginative vision as the former one, but as certain as one. 18 to 20 years prior, a nun died in the house I was in. She had always been sick and most virtuous. I thought she would not enter purgatory. While reciting the office before her burial, I understood she departed from purgatory and went to heaven. While at a college of the Society of Jesus, a brother died in that house that night. While praying for him and hearing Mass, a deep recollection came over me. I saw him go to heaven in great glory, and the Lord along with him. Another friar from our order, a truly good friar, was seriously ill. While at Mass, I became recollected and saw he was dead. He died the hour I saw him. He didn't enter purgatory. He was a friar who had observed his vows well, and the bulls of the order about not entering purgatory were beneficial to him. A friar doesn't consist in the habit, but in enjoying the state of higher perfection, which is what it means to be a friar. But of all that I have seen, I haven't known any soul that did not enter purgatory, with the exception of the soul of this father, the holy Friar Peter of Alcantara, and the Dominican father I mentioned. In some cases the Lord was pleased that I behold the degrees of glory and the places assigned to them. Great is the difference that lies between the glory of some and that of others. Amen.